All right, in this explainer, we're diving into something pretty profound from Apostle Joshua Selman. It's this idea of healing, but not just the physical kind we usually think about. We're talking about a holistic approach, a framework for wholeness that touches every single part of who you are. So, to really get a feel for the kind of power we're talking about, let's just start with a story, a testimony that was shared. I mean, check this out, from being homeless to actually owning a home. That right there is a massive transformation, and it really sets the stage for what we're about to get into. And trust me, it gets even more intense from here. Yeah, as if that wasn't enough, another testimony brought up an even more serious situation. This was a life or death diagnosis, a tumor and cancer. And this is a fight so many people are facing, and it's easy to think it's just a physical battle, right? But then you get the outcome, and it's just incredible. A total reversal, confirmed by doctors. No tumor, no cancer. See, these stories show us that what's happening here is way bigger than just the body. It's pointing to this comprehensive, supernatural kind of healing that hits every part of a person's life. And that is exactly what we're going to break down. All right, so let's get into the framework itself. To really understand this bigger picture of healing, we first have to look at the model of what it means to be human, that this is all built on. It's a view that the apostle breaks down from Scripture. And here it is, the absolute foundation for everything we're going to talk about. This idea of a tripartite nature. It's this concept that we're actually three-part beings. You have your spirit, your soul, and your body. And the key thing is, each one of these parts can get sick or wounded and needs its own specific kind of healing. Okay, so let's start with that first dimension, the deepest part of us, the spirit. Because according to this teaching, this is where the whole journey to being made whole really begins. Now, what Apostle Solomon explains here is really interesting. He says that when it comes to healing the spirit, we're not talking about just feeling happier or getting over a cold. No, it's way more fundamental than that. It's about being reconnected to God, and the term for that is salvation. So get this. The main point here is that you can be totally alive physically, walking, talking, breathing, but be considered spiritually dead. The analogy used in the sermon is so powerful. Think about a fish. A fish can't live outside of water, right? Water is its habitat. Well, the idea is that humanity was designed to live in the habitat of God's presence. And sin is what pulls us out of that habitat, disconnecting us from that source of life. And this chart just lays it all out so clearly. It's a huge distinction we have to get. See, healing the spirit, that's about salvation, a complete change in your spiritual state, from dead to alive. But healing the soul, well, that's what we're going to talk about next. That's about our emotional and psychological well-being. They're two totally different things, but you'll see how they're connected. All right, so that brings us to the second dimension, and this is one that, let's be honest, a lot of us really struggle with every day. We're talking about the soul, the home of your mind, your will, your emotions. It's where all that inner stuff happens, our personality, but also, our deepest hurts. So where do these wounds in our soul even come from? Well, the sermon points to some really powerful and honestly really common human experiences, the kind of stuff that can cut deep into our psyche. And it doesn't matter who you are, how successful you look on the outside, or even where you are spiritually. This stuff can affect anyone. I mean, just look at this list. These are things we can all relate to, right? Disappointed hopes, rejection, betrayal, being let down, past abuse. The sermon argues that these things are like wounds to our soul. And if you don't deal with them, if they're left to fester, they can cause some serious damage in our lives and in our relationships with other people. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. He's saying our world is full of angry people, and that anger often comes from this soulical wound, a wound in the soul. It's not just people being bad or having a short temper. He's framing it as a symptom of a much deeper internal pain that hasn't been healed. Okay, so if these wounds are so common and they cause so much damage, then what's the answer? How do you actually find healing for this stuff, for your emotions? It's pretty clear it takes more than just trying harder or thinking positive. Well, Apostle Solomon lays out a really clear four-step process. It's very practical. You start by bringing it to God directly in prayer. Then you find scriptures that speak life in truth into that specific situation. Number 3, you don't do it alone. You find wise, emotionally mature people to talk to. And finally, and this is huge, you find a purpose that's bigger than your pain and pour your life into it. Okay, and that brings us to the third and final dimension, the body. This is the one we're probably all most familiar with, right? The physical healing that usually gets all the attention. And the whole foundation for physical healing in this teaching comes from this scripture. The idea is that it's presented as a done deal, a benefit that was already secured through Jesus' sacrifice. So it's not something you have to work for or earn, it's a provision that's there to be received by faith. So, according to the sermon, to actually walk in this physical healing, you have to start with two core beliefs. First, you have to be convinced that it's actually God's will for you to be healthy. And second, you have to understand that the source behind sickness isn't God, but a spiritual enemy. Okay, so we've looked at the spirit, the soul, and the body. So what's the big takeaway here? How does this all fit together? Well, the main message is this. True wholeness isn't just a one-track thing. You can't just focus on one area and expect to be truly okay. You can be saved but still be an emotional wreck. You could be physically fit but totally disconnected spiritually. Real, lasting freedom is about the whole package. It's a journey of healing across all three parts of who we are. And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? In a world that's so obsessed with how we look, with our physical health, what if the real breakthrough we're all searching for isn't found there? What if the key is actually in the parts of us we can't see, in the often overlooked health of our spirit and our soul?